Welcome back, everyone. I'm very excited to be here to kick off episode number 2 of Code Sandwich Hour. This is really exciting. We had a great time 2 weeks ago, and today we are joined by our very special guest, Jen Looper, and I will invite her on and say thank you for being here, Jen Looper. It's a pleasure to have you.
Hi, thanks everybody. I'm really pleased to be here. Hello from Boston, from the closet that I've retrofitted into an office. So it's the Cloffice, coming to you live from Boston.
Amazing. You wouldn't know. I mean, you've got I feel like you've got the fancy background figured out. It's great.
Yeah.
Well, Jen, I want to there are so many questions I want to dig in, and we'll have a really fun hour here. But I think that being Code Sandwich Hour, the first thing we should do is totally out of context. Just ask you right away, what is the best sandwich?
So I am kind of a purist, and I like things simple and really, really good. So I really love a BLT, a really good BLT. And when I say BLT, it is bacon, lettuce, tomato with a little smear of mayo on wheat. So it's and in New England, they're always trying to put cheese on things for whatever reason. They put cheese on apple pie.
Interesting. Cheese
Cheddar
on
cheese
apple
on
pie.
apple pie. I know, right? I'm
How
not from.
is that? That seems okay. Yeah.
I'm a Midwesterner, so I can make fun of the yeah. But and the other thing, they always ask it on your BLT, would you like cheese? Like, no, isn't that a BLTC? So yeah.
Interesting. Okay, so do you does the bread have to be toasted?
Should be toasted, yeah.
Should be toasted. Okay. And then do you have like a specific type or cut? I know people are very opinionated about their the type of bacon that they will use.
Yeah, that's a great question. I would avoid the kind of sweet, like the maple bacon that has that sweetness to it, because the tomatoes take care of the sweetness. So you don't want to compete. So a nice salt level and not too thin, but medium thickness, I think would be nice.
Okay.
No, I want
And
one.
just like that, yeah, like the balance of the crispiness as well, probably, right?
Crispy, salty, sweet, crunchy, a little schmear, and some nice bread.
I love that. Ooh, yeah, now I'm hungry. You know, I've seen people put eggs on BLTs and avocados, not cheese though. That's a for me.
It's so strange. It's a thing around here. Avocados, I can actually see. I think I've had that, and that's not too bad.
Yeah, it worked decently. And then eggs are just people add eggs to everything, and like it's okay sometimes, I suppose. Oh, and the New England thing. So I'm in the Midwest. I'm in Cincinnati, Ohio, and I took a trip to Northeast maybe 5 years ago or so, and I ordered a regular coffee, because if you order a regular coffee in Ohio, I think that's often it's synonymous with just black coffee. They just give you a coffee. But in the New England, it also comes with cream and sugar. That's what regular coffee means, apparently.
Yeah, that's true. You have to be precise. Like I think Dunkin' started this, but in New York City, in the kiosks, my favorite thing is to get the little blue cups in the kiosks in New York City, and that's a very sweetened, milky coffee that comes just there's no, there's nothing you can do to customize it. That's what you get, and shut up, So.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, that's where I learned my lesson to be very specific about what we want here. Yes. Okay. Well, now that I'm sufficiently hungry, and I would imagine most of our viewers are as well, let's get into the main part of the show. So, quick recap for those of you who weren't with us a couple weeks ago. This is Code Sandwich Hour. We will take about 45 minutes to an hour, and we'll step through a series of 3 different segments. Last time, I had really terrible punny names for each segment, and it's going to happen again, although we changed them up. I don't know if this will be a thing. We'll try it out and see what happens, and maybe one of these terrible names will stick one of these times. So, okay, you ready to get into it, Jen?
Let's do it.
Fantastic. Okay, first segment. This week, we're calling the first segment Hello World, and doing this because I want to talk a little bit about your what I'll just call your hello world moments in tech. So start us off by tell us a little bit about like how you got into the space. What was your first job in tech all about?
Yeah, my first job in tech was at a startup in Boston, not too far down the street. It was called closingcounsel.com, and it was building websites for title insurance lawyers. So the most boring, the
Okay,
driest.
okay.
Oh my goodness. We used Access databases and ASP, and I was the front end person, so I was creating interfaces, and they were terrifying. There were tabs and tabs and tabs. Boy, oh boy, that was exciting days. That was about, around 2001, 2001. So that was
Everything's
the
table layouts.
Oh yes, beautiful table layouts. And remember the little there's a little transparent image that you would stick in the bottom for some reason, and I'm trying to remember. I'm sure our viewers of a certain age will remember why, but I think it was for SEO or some really, really weird hack. Super weird. Yeah.
So it was just like a transparent image you would put in the, would you put it in the table?
Yeah, it would be like in the footer or something for some weird reason. Now I'm going to have to look it up why we did that.
Interesting. Okay.
Browser.
So what were you just if you were building the front ends, were you just writing plain old HTML, or were you using any sort of frameworks at that time?
We were using ASP, and I must have been just writing HTML on top of it. I don't remember writing much JavaScript. Definitely not. I think I was more styling things. It's all a blur. I do remember, and my amazing colleague Aldo, who was the database guy, and he had a whole array of sounds on his computer, like silly noises. So whenever he was deploying the database for a new client, he would have a button that's like, break out the depends. And I always until today, I was like, we're going live, break out the depends.
That's amazing. Amazing. We get a comment from Brian that the spacer was because the empty table cell would not maintain the proper size, even if the size was specified.
Spacer. Okay, it was a spacer. Alrighty. All right.
Yes. Okay. So it was for the table to actually respect the size that you told it to be. Fascinating. We've come a long way, I think.
Hacks on top of hacks. Amazing. But we had to support IE whatever.
Oh yeah. What version do you think we would have been at in 01-ish?
Was it?
Is this like
6?
5?
5?
I was going to say 5, but yeah, I mean,
yeah. Oof.
Well, because I was thinking I started really I didn't start tinkering probably till closer to 2009, 10, and I was thinking it was maybe on 6 or 7 at that point. Maybe,
yes, it must have been
maybe
way
8.
back. Yeah. Oof. Terrifying days.
Yeah.
Yes,
yeah. Amazing. Do you remember what text editor or IDE you would have used back in those early days?
I feel like it might have been Dreamweaver, but I'm not sure. I know I used that early on, and I'm trying to remember if at Closing Counsel we used Dreamweaver. I think so, something like that. Because I remember the dreadful tab layouts. We should go to the Wayback Machine and go to closingcounsel.com.
Yeah, I'm going to check that out afterwards. I don't know. Sometimes it's fun just to look at like the style. I mean, probably interesting to even look at the code, but even just the style alone is like, wow, very, very different.
One of our designs that we crafted, we called it Xanadu, and we were literally selling a design called Xanadu to these lawyers. Oh man!
Wow. So take us through like the next the journey. Where did you go after that?
Yeah, so I probably should just dial it back a minute because I didn't come from a tech background. So I mean, it was so long ago that like who did, right? So my training is to become a French teacher. So that's why I have little hidden quotes all over the place to trip people up. So I always wanted to be a French teacher, and went all the way through and got my degrees and was ready to get a professorship, but sadly there weren't any. So oh well. And I adjuncted for a little while, and I couldn't make ends meet. So I grabbed I was able to train from scratch and grab that job, and I'm really grateful actually that they gave me someone like me a chance. Probably they didn't pay anything, so it worked for everyone, but it was a nice
Yeah.
And the gal who was our marketing manager, Julie, she wrote my first recommendation letter because we all got laid off, but she was helping us find our next thing. When your startup's founder, and then you just go to the next thing. But yeah, what was your question again? I was dreaming in nostalgia land back then.
That's all fair. So yeah, just curious, like what was the next step after what is it, closed in
Closing cancel.
Closing
cancel.
Yes.
Yeah. So the next step after that was interesting because that was the end of the dot-com boom. They burnt through their finances, laid off everybody, and we were all kind of left adrift. But I had already been having my foot out the door, and I went to a nonprofit. And that was an interesting move because that was my first experience with Edtech, which was because it was an educational nonprofit for it's called Jewish Family and Life. It was funded by the Avichai Foundation, and there were different departments throughout Jewish Family and Life handling like cradle to grave. So the little kids had their area. I was part of the middle school group, so I was Baba Ganoush. That was my website. BabaGanoush.com. So we had Jews news, Baba Ganoush, and it's like the whole thing. Lots of Z's. Yeah, it was very, very, very early days. We had Baba Books as well. So that was our book club, kind of like Scholastic, but for Jewish teenagers. And it was fascinating to work in a nonprofit. It was a different world. The one thing I learned at that gig is that you really need to be invested in the mission to enjoy your work at a nonprofit. Like if you're not, I'm not Jewish, so it was a huge learning experience for me. And it was really, really, really valuable. That's actually a work experience that I learned a lot at and take a lot of lessons from. And let's see, so we had Shmua. Oh boy, I'm trying to remember what some of the other ancillary brands that we had at Jewish Family and Life are blanking. Jewish. I can't remember. Shmoa. Anyway, lots of different, groups of folks who were gathered together to kind of support the community. And I was there during 9/11, which was wild. I've never seen a community organized that fast. We launched a website. We launched JewsNews.com within 3 hours of the bombings. It was unbelievable.
Oh, okay. So you were, were you working on it beforehand, or it was just like you spun up something new?
I guess we had some templates, but we spun out something completely new because what we wanted was to have a news outlet for the particular perspective of the Jewish community and something that the community could turn to and have like a news outlet of their own. So it was really impressive.
Yeah, that's amazing. So did it continue to build after that?
I found it recently on the Wayback Machine. It didn't last more than a year or so. I think it was folded into another one of the brands, but it was kind of one of those, at the moment, kind of creating a gathering place for folks to talk together, places to put in prayers and this kind of thing. It was a really interesting effort and very, very educational for me. But yeah, a very intense moment of my career was Jewish Family and Life.
I bet. Yeah. So what was your role for that organization?
Yeah, I was the web developer, a web designer. I guess they call me a web mistress. Back in the day, we were all webmasters. Is the web mistress. And yes. I was managing BabaGanoush.com and some work on Baba Books, which is the book club. But Baba Ganoush was cool because we were all games, and there's a forum, and we did lots of games in Flash. So it was that was where I was exposed actually to Cold Fusion and the whole Adobe stack, so Cold Fusion and Flash.
Okay.
And but building games in Flash was really, really fun. And we did a lot of cool things. We created our bespoke game, which was sort of like Mahjong, but for teaching Hebrew. blanking on the name of the game, but it was interesting sort of stackable tiles that students could like shuffle around and learn the different Hebrew letters. It was really, really cool.
Yeah, it sounds like something really fun to build. I mean, I think I only really built one game sort of education application, and that was a fun few months. I mean, that kind of like I don't know, having more interactivity, like a little fresh breath of air compared to just putting static layouts on the page and all that. Yeah, really, really fun to see those come together.
Definitely. Yeah. And I just remember the name. It was Shema. Shema was the name of the ancillary website that was for
Okay.
more intellectual debates. And there was also socialjustice.com. And the tagline was "Stop kvetching, socialjustice.com."
Okay. This is great. Okay, so and so you're doing some education tech and all of that. All right, so I was looking back through your LinkedIn job descriptions, and around this time period came across a Snappy the Squirrel. Was that so? Was this I was trying to figure out like what was going on here. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I have no idea what was going on. Yeah, no, actually, Snappy Squirrel. Oh, Snappy's still alive. Well, I mean, the books are still alive. I got really into building mobile apps at a certain moment in my life when it was really awesome to build mobile apps. And one of the cool mobile apps we were able to build was like little ebooks that you can kind of flip through, and then you can have like games attached to them, and they're really nice on iPad. And I'm always interested in educational stuff. And my dad had this idea of writing sort of like money-saving tips and finances for kids. So he wrote up a whole bunch of little storylines. It's his idea to do Snappy. Snappy is like his concept, you know. So we just brought that to him. That was great. If you go to snappysquirrel@jenlooper.com, I think it's still, let's see. I'm converting them over. But actually, it's still live at snappysquirrel.com. Yeah. So okay, so Snappy has issues. Snappy has issues. He realizes it's fall and he has to save nuts for the winter. How is he going to keep his nuts safe? You know, what are you going to bury them? You're going to stick them in a tree? What are you going to do? So he has to learn about banking. And, you know, the sneaky fox comes in and says, you know, I'm going to give you so much interest for your nuts. And you know, and he's a scam artist. So it's better to go to Owl Bank because Owl is an honest person. Owl is, you know, where you want to be banking. You're not going to get as much interest, but your stuff will be safer, you know. So there's a lot of lessons. And then, of course, he needs a nest. And then Snappy plays the stock market and all hell breaks loose. So he buys a bond. My dad is a very cautious investor, so he's always advising that people buy bonds.
That's great, yeah.
It's this whole thing, yeah. It's a risky investment. Snappy loses all the nuts. It's not good.
So is it whole like all the books all kind of like fit together in this whole timeline to like piece all of the information together?
Yeah, it kind of is a consecutive storyline. And I did it as separate mobile apps, and each had a parent section, and they had like tips on how to discuss these things with your kids, and it had a game, so you could always you could read the book with your kid, or you could play the little game. So it would be like a platformer with Snappy running or something. It was all done on Corona SDK. This is my Corona moment when I really enjoyed making mobile apps with Corona SDK.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the squirrel caught my attention because I got my start in like hosting, sort of interview hosting, storytelling. And I started this podcast several years ago called Squirrel Stories, and it had nothing. The difference is it actually had nothing to do with squirrels. It was kind of fun. It would just go. They were live shows, but would get syndicated as podcasts, and we would go to local bars and grab some friends and people who were there and jump up on stage and share goofy and embarrassing stories. And so it was like, this was fun. But now, because I did that for like a year or a year and a half, that now some of the folks that remember that just like everything squirrel related is associated with me. Always, I still get people send me squirrel things all the time. Constantly.
Squirrels are important elements of our ecosystem, so we have to support them.
That's right. Exactly. Yes. Okay. Well, with that, let's transition into our second segment, which today I'm calling the menu, because we'll say what's on the menu today. So like what's happening in your world, and what I'm curious. So you've already talked a lot about education and your interest that's you thought you were going to be a teacher, you wanted to be a teacher, and yet somehow teaching still made its way into your career. And so can you just kind of share like how that progression, like how has teaching kind of stuck with you through the years in your development career?
Yeah, it's a nice question. I always, you're asked by an interviewer or whatever, so tell me about yourself. And one of the first things I usually say is I'm just a teacher. I've taught preschool, I've taught elementary school. I founded the Wellesley Chinese Language School for elementary school kids. I've taught, middle school kids. I founded the Wellesley Code Academy, taught game development for middle school kids, worked with high school kids. I teach adult learners now. And I really think that it's a great way to just keep yourself on your toes, because students will nail your butt to the wall. I'm currently a professor at Boston University Metropolitan College, which is their extension school. And these are professionals. They're, for example, back-end developers who want to learn the front end. And they will bring all of that Java knowledge and just like challenge all your JavaScript knowledge, and it's really fascinating. It's a great conversation to have, to sort of have an exchange of ideas. I just think it's a great way to just keep your brain nimble and always try to not just teach, but also learn, because, it's really 50-50 to keep yourself on your toes. But yeah, right now I'm an educational cloud advocate. So I'm on the next generation team at Microsoft, and we take care of higher education and and faculty as well. But I always have this love for the STEM education and the K-12. I mean, snappy, the K-12 stuff. And I'm currently under contract with Wiley to write a textbook for grades 6 through 8, computer science for kids.
Very cool. Okay.
Yeah, it's going to be fun, and it's all game driven. It's really getting kids to it's closely aligned to the Computer Science Teachers Association, the CSTA standards. They have very strict standards for what you're supposed to teach at that. So it's tightly aligned to the to those standards, but within a game concept. So we're doing things like tinkering with a little bit of data science, a little bit of databases, a little bit of make code, which is a block-based programming thing with a hidden curriculum of sustainability. So you're basically wandering through an enchanted forest with a guide, and she's giving you challenges. Look, this is a petrified forest. This is part of our forest, and this is where we keep our petrified wood. People come and try to steal it. Mm-hmm. Can you create a model, an algorithm to figure out who's here just to take pictures and who's here to take pictures so that they can scope out a thing to steal? So these kind of things,
Interesting.
Yeah. So
did you have to build anything to support that, or are these using languages or frameworks, platforms that are already in place for them?
Yeah, I really want it to be accessible to everyone. So all the tools I chose are browser-based. I don't want, because a lot of schools are going to be using Chromebooks and it's not easy to download things. So I found a way to build database queries. It's called SQL Fiddle. I had no idea. And you can just go into your browser and start bashing away at SQL. And these are great little tools that people can just learn. And it's like no stress, no pain. But we start with Make Code, which is all done in the browser. And that's a Microsoft product for all ages, but really, really useful to build little games. But I also I'm building, this is a print publication. It's going to be a physical textbook. So there has to be a website attached to it with lesson plans. So that's the other half of it. So.
Gotcha. Okay. And that's work that you're doing separate from your work at Microsoft.
Yeah, that's all side gig stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, all the STEM stuff I do is side.
Interesting. So the Microsoft gig, are you you're teaching folks? Is that what it is?
Yes, we're tightly affiliated with the student team, which is part of the Next Generation team, and they are the ones who manage the student ambassador program. So there's lots and lots, 5,500 student ambassadors all over the world. So I'm a cloud advocate, so it's my job to kind of interact with these students. Like, for example, tomorrow's Earth Day. So we created a lovely event on that tenant in Teams so that the students can gather with us, and we're going to talk to some researchers from Microsoft Research to talk about the cool things that they're doing. And they're doing some really, really cool stuff. There's eco pods and all kinds of neat stuff. So we're going to talk about that tomorrow. But yeah, it's our job to kind of keep them engaged and learning, always learning.
Okay, so it's like more, more coordination and engagement and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and also we also deal, talk to faculty who are, using Azure in their classrooms and figuring out, how can we make this easier for you? How can you manage your grant a little bit more efficiently? What can we do in terms of curriculum? I'm passionate about curriculum design, so I'm really interested in building things that could be taught, that a faculty member could just pick up and teach in their classrooms.
Yeah, that's okay. So I read that you were pursuing a degree in curriculum. What is the technical term for the degree?
Yeah, it's a Master's of Education in Curriculum and Instruction at UMass Lowell.
Okay.
So
yeah, so I'm thinking like I love teaching and thinking through the process of like how do I disseminate this information in the easiest way to understand it and all that. But I just like until I read that, I never even considered that there's also like there's the study of teaching as well. And so yeah, that must be fascinating to be like I'm working on teaching, but I'm working on like a higher level, like how do we teach that sort of
meta teaching, yeah.
Meta teaching, that's the way to say it. Yeah.
And yeah, the important thing is that I've been put in contact with all these amazing K-12 teachers who are absolutely heroic and who have like started teaching in 2020 in the middle of a pandemic, to get thrown onto Zoom or hybrid, or doing pods. Have you heard about pods where they have like a house and grades on each floor? What heroes.
Oh, I've heard about it, but I don't really know exactly what it is, how it works.
Yeah, incredible. So, but it's interesting, the courses or the classes that were given in this program. I'm really looking forward to this coming semester starting mid-May, because one of the classes is teaching diverse students. The other one is assessment. And assessment is hard. It's really hard to get it right, especially online. So I'm curious, what can we do about assessment?
Interesting. So is a lot of what you're doing is it's almost like kind of like testing, figuring out how to teach in the most effective way and assess in the most effective way.
Yeah, and a lot of the teachers are coming from school districts that have like prepackaged curriculum, or they have a particular type of instruction that they do. They fit into a certain pattern, and they have to kind of like retrofit their learnings into the pattern that their school is delivering to them. So it's a very, very interesting moment to be a K-12 teacher right now. It's a really hard job, and my hat is absolutely off to these people.
Because they're always having to follow something, but also just like constantly adapting.
Yeah, plus all the standardized tests.
Okay.
Yeah, dealing with all of these
Interesting.
things. Yeah.
And you also have you have another nonprofit that you run, FrontEnd Foxes.
Yeah. So this is a passion project. It's about 4 years now that we've been working on this, and we started it as sort of the Vue community's version of NG Girls, the Angular communities program of this type.
Okay.
So it's basically gathering bunches of women together if they want to learn, and then creating a curriculum so that they can work together to build something in Angular. We did the same thing, but in Vue, and traveling from conference to conference and doing like a free workshop before the conference, and then maybe getting some tickets for the folks to attend the conference as well. So it's a diversity kind of initiative. Pandemic crushed a lot of these communities, and it's been very, very, very difficult. So we pivoted and we opened a boot camp. And so we are now frontendfoxes.school. And it's either foxes or squirrels with me. So
fair, something animal based. It's great. It's
yeah. And so that's been going well. We graduated about 200 ladies all over the world. So we had people in Africa, Europe, North America, and Latam at various times. So we'll start again in September, we hope. We have a new sponsor, so we're kind of just getting the logistics set, and we have some amazing instructors, and we have our own curriculum that I'm happy with, which is important.
Very cool. Yes, yes. And then do you help place the folks after they graduate as well, or just give them resources to help with that?
Yeah, we try to help them network via us. I've had ladies in LATAM specifically dropping out of the boot camp because they got jobs. So I'm like, well, bye. You know,
Wow,
like,
amazing. Yeah,
good job.
that's a win for everybody.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. But this is something that our future sponsor, Reddit, which I can say now that they are going to be sponsoring cohort number C3, which is our fourth cohort. I would like to work with companies and figure out how we can get some heavier mentoring, and maybe after the boot camp to keep going, what we can do to kind of support them as people go into the job force. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. So I found it really interesting that you're teaching tech at the higher education level. You also have this boot camp nonprofit that is, focused on teaching people tech and getting jobs and all of that. And from my experience, those two things tend to clash. They tend to be at odds. Higher education tends to, be teaching things that are maybe like one step behind what other folks are teaching. Boot camps and maybe a little bit more theoretical. Boot camps are tend to just be like, we're super fast paced. We're trying to get you placed, get a job. And so with doing both of those, is it a misconception, or, what do you do to what's similar and different about your life in both of those worlds?
That's a great question, and it's a great insight. With the higher ed work that we do, we tend to be a little bit more product focused, so we're talking to folks who already have an Azure grant because they want one, which means that Microsoft gives them a certain amount of money and they can burn through Azure doing things. So it's a little bit less curriculum design focused with that particular way that we interface on a professional level with faculty in higher ed. However, there's higher ed and there's higher ed. I teach at an extension school, which is right in between, right? And this is a very interesting moment in higher ed, because during the pandemic, 1 million students dropped out. There's the missing million. We don't know what happened.
Oh,
and so where are they going to go? Enrollments have been crushed. So maybe, this is a moment where we need to rethink. We need to rethink what we're doing in higher ed. I don't know if boot camps are the answer, but maybe there's some kind of mishmash between the extension school experience. Boston University Extension School has a venerable and interesting pre-professional program, which is really nice to see. But, we're teaching web skills. I teach HTML, CSS, JavaScript with a little bit of Vue. Okay. Same thing. This is almost the same thing that we do in the boot camp. So learn the basics. Coursera fits in here somewhere as well. All of the MOOCs, CS50 from Harvard. So we're in a moment where we're democratizing higher ed to an extent that curriculum is going to start busting open, and I really look forward to that. I think interesting, it's a really fascinating moment. The next couple of years in higher ed are going to be a wild ride, so get ready.
Okay, all right. I feel like it's been a long time coming, so that's really exciting. I mean, are these extension schools, or like whatever seems like it's in that middle ground? Are they do they have the same accreditation? Like if you graduate from one of those schools, does it look the same on your resume?
I mean, at this point in time, who cares?
Maybe it doesn't matter anymore.
Like Microsoft doesn't even ask if you graduated. It's the whole degree thing is really, really changing. It's very interesting, but they are accredited according to the state rules of accreditation. So, but the degree, I've seen it in my own department that people are unclear the difference between Harvard Extension and Harvard. For me, this drives me crazy because there's a massive difference. But I wonder if the brands are getting very much muddled. So I'll tell you one little piece of intel I have from MIT. My husband's a professor at MIT in EECS, Electrical Engineering and Computer Science, and they're revamping their curriculum majorly towards project-based learning. And I'm like, if
Okay.
MIT is doing this, this is fascinating. So, they're all getting in there and doing labs. They're doing maker type activities with circuits and signals and systems. And he's kind of like hanging on with his fingernails because he's an applied physicist, with classical Chinese training. So he's like, but it's wild over there. So, and they're blazing the trail. So, we'll have to see what happens. I think it's going to be fascinating.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking when you say that. It's like, okay, well, if MIT is changing what they're doing, then probably we start to see other institutions follow suit pretty soon.
Yes, yeah. Although just today in the Chronicle of Higher Education, I read that MIT is going back to asking for SATs. Interesting.
Oh,
Because
I didn't know that they had stopped.
They stopped over pandemic. Everyone thought it was permanent. It's like, sorry guys, back to the classrooms for you.
So what was the reasoning? Was it just the pandemic, or was it also that there's some flaw in the SAT system?
A little of both, I think. We had hoped that people would understand that standardized tests are easily gamified, are very easy for privileged people to do much, much better because they get all that test prep, and there's really a rough way to do any kind of assessment of a student's capability. But everything is gamified. So I think they feel like they have to have some kind of baseline somehow. So it's a tough question for them. But the headline today in the Chronicle was MIT just reintroduced the SATs, and this is why you shouldn't. I was like, all right.
Okay, yeah. Fair,
I mean, it worked for me. I got into Lowell without having to retake the GREs, which made me really happy because I'm not taking those things again. The graduate student school exams. Like,
oh, okay. So what did they not use that anymore, or did you get in for some other qualification?
Yeah, they just asked you for your transcripts.
Okay.
Just to make sure you have a BA so that you can get into an MA. And I was like, well, I have a PhD. I don't know if that counts.
Yeah, does that count?
They wouldn't take it.
Okay.
I had to beg Wellesley to get my transcript back. It's kind of strange. Pandemic was weird.
You're like, yeah, okay, well, the PhD isn't good enough anymore or something. Yeah. Interesting.
Red tape.
Okay, so before we move on, I got a question from JJ who says, back to gamification, designing game education. What do you do to determine if the game is going in a particular direction that will make it popular? And do you keep updating games after you release them?
Ooh. So I haven't done game development professionally. I never really did it professionally. I did it as a side hustle. The only time I made money off of an app that I built was when I sold it. So that's one thing. Because the golden age of games, indie games, right, was, well, what do you think? Like 2010, 2014?
I'm not the person to ask because I'm not a classic gamer.
Yeah, neither am I. And I was always interested in educational games, which is an absolute buzzkill, So in that beautiful window when you could actually make a little bit of money with indie games, it was all about SEO. You had to get the App Store to pick up your game and feature it and stand out from all the rest. Flappy Bird type stuff. You did have to update it pretty frequently, as I remember. I'm still the one playing like Farm Heroes, I love Farm Heroes because the only people who play it are the QA testers at King, and I could beat them, and I'm very happy. I got to top of the leaderboard.
Whatever it takes to win.
Yeah, but I think games have turned so high tech and so professional now. I think, man, if you're an indie game developer, it's a rough row to travel, I think.
Yeah, what is it? Because I imagine these companies have gotten like they have a platform that they work on, and that just keeps getting more intense. That it's the starting point is probably, or the gap is probably getting larger all the time.
Yeah, I mean, you want to get acquired, right? Blizzard just got acquired by Microsoft, which surprised everyone. So we'll see what happens with that. But we've got the Xbox ecosystem as well. Not a gamer, but I'm always interested in educational games and to see how you can teach. I was just on Twitter and I saw that Elon Musk created a bespoke custom school for his kids, big surprise. And it's all about games. And they allow kids to come and do this school curriculum for extracurriculars. And it's all about like working in a team to solve problems. It could work. Personally, I think kids should be outside playing in the dirt, but I'm like the Waldorf mom, I'm not the Elon Musk mom. So I don't know, but apparently it works. It works for some folks. My daughter taught at Game U, which had a lot of autistic children in her classroom, and they really do well with the kind of building their own games and really focusing on the details. And so there are certain audiences that game focused learning really works for.
Yeah, and it's just so I don't know. I was thinking totally like other direction, but I'm reading this like really thick history book right now, and I would never have read that for fun while I was in school, let alone I wouldn't read it if I was told to read it. It was like the way we were taught history was so boring and dry. And I'm like, I don't know if it's because I'm getting older that I'm interested in these stories more, but also it just wasn't super accessible to get this 600-page book and go through it without lots of context. So I'm like, if we can use games to make kids more interested in what they're learning, I'm all for it, with the balance of getting outside, of course.
Yes. But I feel like isn't civilization or one of that type of game that's been brought online? I feel like they're working with universities and creating real educational experiences around wandering through Herculaneum and Pompeii, like ancient Greek, because they can do everything in 3D. And it's really impressive. And I don't remember the name of it. Somebody will tell me the game I'm thinking of, but it's starting to get, like, the convergence of education and games is starting to get much more rigorous, which is interesting, I think.
Interesting. Yeah, fascinating world that we live in. Everything's changing all the time, which is great.
Yeah.
Which is great. Okay, with that, let's move on to our last segment with our last few minutes. So this week, I'm going to call this one hors d'oeuvres, because why not have snacks at the end? But no, in this segment, I'm going to ask a series of fairly short questions that should have somewhat quick answers. And I tend to be all over the place. So we'll have some tech, some personal, and feel free to pass on any of them. This puts you on the hot seat.
Okay.
Cool. Okay. So question number 1, what is the best part about teaching?
Best part about teaching is when someone stops you, and this really happened to me, in Staples, the checkout girl, and she's like, I took your class. And because I took your class, I'm going to school in the fall to major in computer science. And I was like, absolutely. My sister, you go and slay. I love that.
That is amazing. Oh, yes. So like just making that difference and, like helping other people's improve their life, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Love that. Okay. Question number 2. What piece of advice could you have used most when you were first starting out your career?
Really anything. I didn't have any. I wish we would have had things like Women Who Code, but we didn't. It was not a thing way back in the day. I think that I was not advised early enough to embrace the open source. I've always said this. I grew up in a kind of the closed ecosystem, the Adobe ecosystem, Cold Fusion and all those sort of more closed source type of environments. And I think it would have been smarter and probably more sustainable to jump into the JavaScript ecosystem earlier and embrace that open source and really start contributing early on to open source. It's been considerably later that I started doing this sort of thing because I just didn't know it was a thing.
Interesting. Okay, good answer. Number 3, what is the one thing someone should not miss if they are traveling to Massachusetts, Boston area?
Oh my gosh. Massachusetts. There's a lot of touristy stuff to do in Boston. I'll tell you a little place that I love. And it allows you to go to the North Shore, which is have some very pretty beaches. as you're driving up 95 North, there's a place called Lobsterland.
Okay. All right. It's going
It's
to be
right on
good.
the highway. You cannot miss it. It's a big sign, Lobsterland, Lobsta. And they have these big ass lobsters, you can just like eat as much as you want. It's become pretty popular. So fight through and get parking and just park at Lobsterland and eat yourself sick and then go to the beach and like vegetate. That's what I would say.
That sounds amazing. Yes. That was the other thing I remember from that Northeast trip, were the lobster rolls everywhere, just on the side of the road.
Delicious.
Great.
Yes.
So good. Okay, number 4, what are the most rewarding and also most challenging, maybe probably two different things, aspects of working at one of the giant tech firms?
Yeah. I always say that working at Microsoft has been the most challenging career shift in my life. It's nothing like nothing you can do prior will prepare you for Microsoft. It's so big. There's at one end, there's like you're in the kid in the candy store. You've got all these opportunities at your fingertips. There's just so much going on, and you can kind of try to pursue your passions. Which is really awesome. There's great people here. I have to say that I'm sure the old timers who used to know Microsoft in the old days would be really surprised to hear that, but the culture has shifted dramatically. And the CEO, and I'm not drinking the Kool-Aid, our CEO has really shifted the culture. He's done an amazing job turn the Titanic right on around. So well done, Satya. The challenging thing is that it is so big, and you just have it's just an immense amount of pressure to have impact. You can have somewhat easier impact in a somewhat smaller company. If I break production at Baba Ganoush, I have busted production at Baba Ganoush, and you need to fix that before you can go home. You pull that at Microsoft, there's going to be issues. So not that I'm in the process of breaking production, but they wouldn't let me anywhere near. But it's just such a large org, and just to find your niche can be challenging for some people.
Okay.
Yeah.
I love that. That's great perspective. Okay, number 5. How many languages do you speak?
I speak English and French very fluently. My Spanish is mediocre. My German is worse than that. My Latin is shameful. I know enough Chinese for people to, I know when people are insulting me.
Okay.
I'll give them the look.
That's great.
But, and I can scrape by an Italian.
Okay.
So
did those all come from getting the PhD in French, or was it just you've picked up different languages from different places?
I really love learning languages. I'm pretty efficient at it. It's just something I like to do, and I'm pretty good at doing. I just started learning French when I was, 16 or so, or younger, 14. And so that came more easily, and then spent a lot of time over there. And then once you learn one Romance language, the other kind of roll on in, so you take a couple classes in Spanish and you start to figure out the patterns, same in Italian. And you need to know Latin if you're going to do medieval studies, which is what I did. Ugh, do not like Latin. And German because of my heritage. And then my husband's Chinese. So when we go to China, I need to know when they're insulting me.
Yes, absolutely. That's great. I did 3 years of Latin in high school, and yeah, it was brutal.
It's murder. Yeah.
Sorry.
You have your Wheelock guide.
Yeah. Oof. Yeah. Those were interesting days. Okay, so number 6. Okay, I have a 4-parter here for you. So here we go. Okay, if you could have lunch with anyone, living or not, who would it be? Where would you take them? What would you order? And what topic would you bring up first?
Wow.
It's a loaded question. I know.
No, it's an interesting question, but it reminds me very much of my college application, because we had to talk about, who's our sort of like hero and why. So I'm going to give you the same answer because she's still
Okay, great.
an incredible person to hang out with. But Eleanor of Aquitaine, she was a 12th century queen. She was the wife of 2 kings and the mother of 2 more. She was the mother of Richard the Lionheart and bad King John. She was an absolute savage. And Henry, the young king, that was her other son. And she banded all those kids together and tried to overthrow her husband, Henry II. So it was, she was a badass. She got mad because he wasn't paying attention to her. But anyway, she was a huge heiress. She had inherited most of southern France was her duchy. And so she was, an absolute prize. So she was married to Louis VII in France, and he bored her to tears. So she chucked him and married Henry, who was considerably younger than she was. I want to say over 10 years younger. Didn't matter. And anyway, long story short, total savage in a world where, you could get snatched at any moment and forcibly married off if you're that kind of heiress. She, basically lived the way she wanted to live and caused an immense amount of trouble. And I have massive, massive props. She also was responsible for cultivating a considerable amount of arts and culture brought up from via the Crusades into Aquitaine and into England. But I let's see, where would I take her to lunch? Geez, I think she should take me to lunch. I probably would just bring her home and cook something nice. Maybe.
Okay, that's fair. That counts.
I don't know what do people eat, But she's pretty sophisticated, in her tastes. She had a taste for the finer things. So maybe one of the nicer restaurants. Oh, we could go to like the Mandarin Oriental and have tea. Or actually, Boston Public Library has lovely English tea. Maybe she'd like that. So that would be good. Yeah.
Okay.
So that was the person. That was the venue.
You've got the order. You got the tea. So then, what's the first topic that you're discussing?
I would really like to know why exactly she turned on Henry II. Like, I want the tea. We're going to have tea, and I want the tea. I want all the details. Like, why? What happened? And why? What happened to make her sons like such pains in the rear? Like, they were really problematic. Her daughter was really cool though. So, and it was a huge. She was Marie de Champagne. I think she was married into Champagne, and she also brought a lot of arts and culture into Champagne. I would also like to know. The rumor has it that she had a fling with a troubadour. So I want to know that tea as well. It's just lots and lots of gossip that I'd love, because we just don't know. She didn't write anything. I also would like to know what she looked like, but I've always been kind of really interested in this cool, savage, like no nonsense. And her mother-in-law was a savage too. Matilda was really, these ladies.
It's amazing. I have some reading to do now. I gotta learn. This is great. All the gossip. Okay, we've just a few more. All right, so number 17. All right, I read the other day that there's a new Guinness Book of World Records record for the number of times someone has watched a movie in the cinema, and someone has watched Spider-Man 292 times at the theater. And so in that same vein, if you had to go to the cinema to watch a film 292 times, and it was the same film every time, which one would it be?
Wow. Oh, man. There's a movie that I really love. Okay. I love all the Merchant Ivory stuff. So, like, some of the historical stuff and The Room with a View and all the old Helena Bonham Carter stuff. But there's a movie that just wipes me out every time I watch it. And I would have to be like in the mood to watch this that many times, but because of its soundtrack, there's a movie called All the Mornings in the World, Tous les matins du monde. And it's the story of Marin Marais, who was a viol player. So he played the prototype cello. He's very famous around Louis XIV's time. and his teacher, and the learnings he got from his teacher. So that's a terrific movie, and the soundtrack is absolutely ravishing. So I think I could sit through that several times, but I'd probably dissolve in like the ectoplasm by the end of that.
Okay. Yeah, I'm like I don't even know if it mattered how many years you spread that out. It's like 292 times. That's
a lot. That's
a lot of times.
That's a lot of times.
Okay, second to last one. I like to ask this question: Who do you nominate for us to have on the show next? Who would you want to see on the show?
Who'd you have last time? Was it Ray?
Ray Camden. Mm-hmm.
How about Frederick Harper?
Okay.
So cool, and he's so fun.
Fantastic. We'll get Frederick on the show. Great. Okay. Number 9, last one. My second favorite question after what is the best sandwich is what is the worst mistake you've made as a developer? Or maybe we'll just say, since if it's larger, as we talked a lot about teaching today, so maybe like what's the worst mistake that you've made throughout your career?
I mean, it's really stupid mistakes. In Massachusetts, there's a thing called the tax holiday, like a weekend in August. You're not allowed to charge sales tax for Massachusetts purchases. I was working at a .com, and I turned it off for the weekend. Forgot to turn it on for a week.
That's a good one. I like that one.
I mean, fortunately, we didn't have that many Massachusetts people buying expensive stuff, but it was so stupid. And because it was manual process, what a dumb thing to do. It took production. I busted a shopping cart pretty good. Same company. I was reckless. I feel bad. The manager was really nice about it, but he's like, "You can't go home now. You have to fix production."
Yeah, that's it's good. I like that question because a lot of people have, especially developers, somebody has that story, or when folks don't have that story yet, it's like, don't be too afraid of acquiring the story someday, because it's happened to all of us.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Test before pushing.
That's right. So far, I think one of the cringiest answers I've got to that is I had a friend who told me he was contracting with a larger organization, but just like independent contractor, and accidentally deleted 30 days worth of data, and there was no database backup for it. So just gone. Yeah. So
the database stuff is scary because like half the time those backups are just not there. So,
yeah. And you've got to be diligent about the backups, about testing. There's another one from an old colleague who had that you could upload a CSV into this some more antiquated CMS and like store, and it would store new data, but there was a checkbox that would say overwrite existing data, and so like the implication or the assumption doing that is that, yeah, I'm going to match these rows, and if they're different, then that's what he thought, and it meant actually like I'm wiping everything out, and here's the new, and so it's like immediately took this whole website offline because it deleted all the data. They had the data, they lost on maybe like a day's worth of changes, but it was still like that's a bad checkbox. Yeah,
that's a rough checkbox. Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's just like the question of when developers are asked to do infrastructure type stuff. Scary. Here I'm trying to struggle through my 8 or 900 exam,
Oh, absolutely. Oh, well, thank you very much for being with us, Jen. This was so much fun.
Yay. Well, thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate the time.
Absolutely. Now, before we go, if folks want to get in touch with you, I know we've had a couple more questions pop up, but we're going to wrap it here, so you can follow up separately. How can folks get in touch with you, and anything else that you want to plug in these last couple minutes?
Yeah, that's nice. Yeah, just reach out to me on Twitter. I'm at Jen Looper on Twitter. And you can always reach out to me on LinkedIn. And I usually kind of hang out there and, interact with folks. It's a little bit easier on LinkedIn than on Twitter. So yeah, I'm happy to chat anytime. Just reach out.
Fantastic. Thanks. And thank you all for watching live. We'll be back here same time in 2 weeks at 1 p.m. Eastern time. And until then, enjoy your time and we'll see you next time.
Thanks so much. Cheers.